Well, that's silenced everybody. Right, well, thank you very much for coming out on this very cold weather. I've made the remarks already to our guest speaker, David, that perhaps he brought some of, just a little bit of his Canadian weather over with him, but never mind. He denies the accusation, of course. Right, so our special speaker this morning, and it's unusual, of course, to have a Let's Talk on a Thursday, but Friday even. Let's get my dates right. Okay. I'm glad that everybody's attentive. Okay, so we have a special speaker, Professor David Richardson. He's from St Mary's University in Halifax in Nova Scotia, and he's here to talk about his grandfather, Frederic Stuart Richardson. You'll actually see a little, if you look very closely, you probably can't see it now necessarily, but it's right up in the top corner. Just right there. Okay. That's a caricature portrait done by Harold Packer back in the day of Frederic Stuart Richardson. Now, he's been marked down as one of our most preeminent early artists in 1904 altogether, and so we're delighted to have the opportunity that David will be able to speak about his grandfather and his adventures. And he was, Frederic was born in 1855, the son of an English pastor. He was left an inheritance at the age of 22, and he faithfully decided to abandon engineering and to take up art studies in Paris. Maybe I should have done that myself. It might have improved my watercolour. So, on a lifetime trip, with the inheritance after completing his studies, he travelled with his cousin and taking painting materials and all that with him. He took all this material to chronicle some of his trips and sights and so on of his travels in North America, particularly the Adirondack mountain range of northeastern New York State. So, without any further ado, can I invite Professor David Richardson to the platform, please? Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks very much for coming out. My talk is about my grandfather, Frederic Stuart Richardson, and if the technology works.
Can you move it down?
It doesn't seem to want to.
Usually.
Well, I think it's.
Right.
Maybe you could do the other, go to the right. There we go.
Okay, so at last. Anyway, this is pictures of young Frederic Stuart Richardson. He was born, surprisingly perhaps to you, in Bristol, up near the Cleveland Suspension Bridge. And he was born in the house of his aunt, and he had cousins living around about. His father, though, as was mentioned, was Vicar of Sandy in Bedfordshire, and his great-grandfather, or his great-grandfather, my Frederick's grandfather, lived in Whitby in Yorkshire and was an industrial chemist. So he had three sort of key areas, Bristol, and then Sandy, and then Yorkshire. And he was, yes, it says here, he was sent to a prep school and then to Repton Public School. And at Repton, got the right thing, this is a picture of his school assembled. And at Repton, he proved to be only effective in two areas. One was cricket, and you see here, there he is, that's Frederic Stuart Richardson, who's played cricket, and that's his cricket bat. which is currently in, actually the family donated it to the museum of the school. So, and the second area that he was strong in was painting and drawing and art. And so the family decided that the thing that he should do was to do architecture. And he went down to the Crystal Palace School of Architecture and was associated with a firm that refurbished harbours. And he hated it. And so then he came into an inheritance, and that's his picture of his father, who was Vicar of Sandy, and that's Frederic here. And the vicar actually had 3 children by his first wife, who died unfortunately in childbirth. Then he remarried again, and you know, many of the vicars in those days were like Darwin. They studied nature and did things. This one here, I'm afraid, he only had children. And this is a picture of him at his silver jubilee of his second wife, and you can see these are his children and his children's associates. So anyway, and that's where Sandy in Bedfordshire, if you don't know where it is just north of London. So he hated it, and he came home and told his family, I've just got an inheritance. I want to go to France and study with the Impressionists. And the family in those days, who had more effective control of children than we do nowadays, said, well, if you want to do that, you have to submit a portfolio to a well-known artist. And they selected this guy, Sir Samuel Luke Files. And if he says you've got any talent, you can go, and if he says you have no talent, you have to go back and continue your architectural studies at Crystal Palace Architecture School. Well, fortunately, this man who did this sort of painting said he's got talent. So he went across to France and he studied with Carolus Durand, and who was a well-known artist. Here's a picture of him. And one of his fellow students that he got to know well was, and they were friends, was John Singer Sargent. And you know he was famous because he painted this picture of Madam X up here, who had too much bosom showing. So, yes, anyway. And this is a picture of my grandfather when in Paris wearing his little French hat. And this is a Carolus Durand picture of one of the Impressionists, Monet. And anyway, then he finished in Paris, came back home, and we know, because we have a sketchbook that he had, that he went to America. And there was a rumor that the reason he went to America was to see Longfellow. But we had no evidence that he actually, maybe this was just a story. We had no evidence that he went to Longfellow, to see Longfellow, and we had no idea when that could possibly be. So anyway, I tried to do some research into it, couldn't find it but then I had found a tape that my mother had talked to my grandmother about, and so this tape. So on the tape, my grandmother said he went to America once with one of the Nashes. So what I did is I contacted the Horton Library, which controls the Longfellow Museum sort of thing, or vice versa. And I said, do you have any correspondence from a Richardson or from a Nash. And they came back to me and said, well, nothing from Richardson, but we do have something from Nash. And if I praise you this a little bit, it says from one of the Nashes, my dear sir, just 2 years ago in the company of Mr. Carpenter and Mr. Whiteside, I had the honour of an introduction to you. I remember on that occasion telling you of one of my sons who has often tried his hand at poetry. He is now about to pay a short visit to your great country, and I am sure from his love of poetry and things would give him more delight than an interview, however brief, with one of whom he often speaks. My excuse for this liberty that I'm taking is the recollection of the very kind way in which you received me and my friends in 1879. Well, let's go further. There's the second thing. But look, at the end he says, I remain with much respect your very faithfully, Charles Nash. P.S. My son is accompanied by a young artist, Mr. F. Richardson. So we now was able to go, they did visit, and it says 2 years ago, and it's up here in, where are we, 1879, 2 years. So they went to visit Longfellow in 1881. Longfellow was close to the end of his time there. So his time on Earth. So he passed away the year later. So they got there, but where did they go? Well, we've got the sketchbook of my grandfather's book on that occasion. And we can see that they went from, whoops, if I can get the thing, New York up to Boston to see Longfellow, then I forget the one, up to Champlain Lake, Adirondack Mountains up here, whoops, Adirondack Mountains, then they went over to Niagara Falls, back to the Catskill Mountains, back to New York, back to home. So where do we see? That's New York. He's written New York pilot boat. When I looked at that, I thought, that's strange. In 1881, the pilot boat, which brought steamers in and out of New York, still doing under sail. And then I had another look, and you see that there. That is not sail, that's a sail-assisted boat. That's a steam-assisted sailboat, the pilot boat. So anyway, that was that one. Then this was crossing Lake Champlain, the Adirondack Mountains, top of the Whiteface Mountains, Adirondack Mountains. And as you can see, there's my grandfather's written where it was on each of these things. The mountain scene, crossing Lake St. George. And look at this, Niagara Falls. Now you imagine trying to draw that picture today. You wouldn't be able to get anywhere near sitting down at sitting down at the level of the falls, and then another picture of the falls as well. And then from there, they went back to Catskill Mountains. And this is a famous area, the Rip Van Winkle story, where, you know, he went to sleep for 100 years and then woke up again. And that's the picture from there. And that was the trip. This was a little sketchbook which I still have of his trips, the different places that he visited. So, but then he came home. And when he came home, you know, he'd been to France to study, he came to America. When he came home, what was he looking for? Somewhere that didn't cost anything. And his father was vicar of Sandy, and there's a big vicarage there and outbuildings. So my grandfather had a built a studio in this from which he did his art. But he didn't do just sit in Sandy. He actually traveled around, and he and two friends spent, as you can see, 10 years. They would go up every year to Carradale, which is here in the peninsula here. And I was brought up on a farm called Carradale Farm. My father named the farm after the place that his father went to paint. And he went up with Hamilton McCallum and Kenneth Mackenzie. And that's the top one, shows the sort of thing that Hamilton did, and the same on the bottom. What's interesting is that they both didn't last very long. See, they only a short life, but they were lovely paintings. Anyway, this is one of the paintings my father did when he was in Carradale. One of his things that was a speciality of him was these little fires with smoke coming from. He was very good at doing that. So that's one that FSR did. And again, he didn't limit himself to Carradale, Scotland. He went to France and to Holland, and with this guy, Bagshaw, and this is the Bagshaw painting. You can see him there. And he went to Montreuil in France and did two lovely paintings, watercolors and some oils as well. That's the pig market in Montreuil, France. And when I see this, I think, you know, we know about people going across North America in carriages like this one. And I thought, I didn't realize that they had that sort of arrangement in France. And that's the cattle market in France, in Montreuil. Just other pictures from his time in Holland, mending nets, and then the shrimpers. And you know it's Holland, those of you who are sailors, because they had lee boards. And this is another Dutch one. Again, you can see the lee board there. Instead of a keel, they had lee boards because of the conditions in Holland. I mentioned that his grandfather lived in Whitby. So Whitby was a place which is shown here, a place that he spent a lot of time every year from 1882 to 1933. He would go up each summer to stay in a cottage which was associated with the house that his brother had. So he had a cheap place to stay, and the advantage was, of course, that he joined the Staithes group and did a lot of painting with them. And painting in Yorkshire was associated with Dame Laura Knight. I met her several times when she visited my father towards the end of her life when she was about 90. I remember her as a very small baby. But anyway, that was interesting. She was the official artist for the Nuremberg trials. These are just pictures of his various paintings that he did with the Staithes group and in Yorkshire. And Whitby was a key place that he looked at. And here's a Whitby. There's one, Homeward Bound, nice oil painting that he did. Gutting things, all sorts of different farmhouses doing this. There's Yorkshire again, driving sheep. But then he started going to Cornwall. The reason for that was, if you remember, there was Laura Knight, and her husband was Harold Knight, and he was very upset when many of his sailor friends were drowned in a big storm they had at that, when he was painting with the Newling group. So they moved down and started painting in Cornwall, and my grandfather did the same thing. That's him painting in Polperro in Cornwall, and this is the painting that he was doing at the time, Polperro. And anyway, he was there one day, and as you can see here, he was in Covert Hotel, and he was there, and when he heard that two young ladies were coming to stay in the hotel, he decided that he should clear out, but he didn't do it immediately. And then when they were on the beach, these two young ladies, one of them called Elsie, was 26, said to her niece, or no, said to her, the person she was with, who was a cousin, run and ask the gentleman what he's painting. And he said, go and ask the young ladies to come and look for themselves. So she did. My grandmother, that was the Codric and the painting they were doing. And so when she got home, Elsie, my grandmother said, her father said to her, what's going on? And she said, oh, I just got engaged. And they weren't too happy about it, but they married. And they had it was a very clever thing my grandfather did, because my grandmother was a brilliant cook, and she was also a brilliant dressmaker. And she made all his clothes, according to my father, over the years that they were together. Anyway, that's my grandmother there at 16. These are her sisters, so you can see why the family was quite keen to get her married off, because there were too many. All of them they all got married except this one. This was Auntie, we called her Auntie Moo, but her name was Muriel. So, anyway, when the Vicar of Sandy, he died on holiday, when he went on holiday at 91. So then the question is, what my grandfather couldn't keep on painting. He'd married in 1912. He'd spent the first few years still painting in my grandfather's area, the same place, but they lived in a house nearby the vicarage. So when the Vicar of Sandy died in Bedfordshire, they said, well, what are we going to do? Let's move back to Bristol, because in Bristol he had the cousins and his aunt, who actually, when the first wife of the vicar died, had actually moved to be with the vicar, acting as a mother to the three children, the first three from the first wife. So Bristol was the key thing to go back. So he moved back to Bristol, to Long Ashton. And so that's where he lived and eventually died. He died at 78. He actually painted within up to 4 days. He got probably meningitis, an infection, and knocked him off. So, but he was painted a lot. Anyway, I thought I'd just say a little bit about what I know from my father about his techniques. And he was a very strong advocate of painting in plein air. And he would often do the oil painting first, and if he liked it very much, he'd make a watercolor afterwards. And this is my family. but that's one of his paintings in the back that I'll talk about in a moment. But if, yes. So that's my grandmother, who was the wife of Frederic. This is my father and mother, and the family, and that's me. So this is the painting that was on the wall there. It's an oil painting, and this is one where he did the oil painting and then afterwards did the watercolor. And you can see there's the oil painting, there's the watercolor. So, and in order to do this plein air painting, he actually had a device constructed, which you can read there, was a box 7 feet long by 5.5 feet wide, and he used it for 50 years. He eventually put it in, had it when he had his family, he put it in Lee Woods, and it was there and left there when he died. It's left there, but anyway, he used it for a long time. And this is what it looked like. So it's the box, and the lid of the box would open out, and then you would put it on the 6 here, and then you'd put a canvas here, so you could be looking out this way and painting your painting, and then at night time, or if the sun moved, you'd drop put the painting back in there, drop the lid, and come back next day. Really neat. And he would take this to Whitby or Scotland or wherever they were going by train, and then a horse and cart to take it to the place that he wanted to paint it for. And what's interesting is you can see the effect, because if you set something up, you have to go to all the trouble of taking a horse and cart and everything up and setting it up somewhere. You want to do a painting. So this was a painting called Gathering Wood, and you can see here his famous little fire. Here's the person gathering wood, and here you see this tree, right? So once you've done this tree, done the painting, why not do another one? And here's another thing, the fringe of the forest, as he named this one. And here, when you look at it, there's the tree. But now we've got a fire, but it's changed. So he used that. And these are other paintings that he did in Scotland using that device. And this is him painting in his studio towards the end of his life. He did some painting. That one actually, I think, is in Newlyn, or it was in the family and was sold. But if you go down to the Newlyn art group, you'll see that they have they've got this made into a magnetic thing that you can stick on your fridge. I'm not sure my grandfather would be very pleased to know that's what happened to his painting. It's on the fridge. So anyway, with watercolors, as it says, he took special care to prepare his own paper for doing it. And I was actually just at my sister's yesterday looking at some of the unframed watercolors that she has, and you can see that all the nail holes where he would stretch it the night before going. So he'd stretch it, and then, as my father would say, he would start looking at the big picture and then gradually get more and more detail, and the picture would gradually clear like a developing photograph. And my father would say that when he went to Yorkshire, they went to Yorkshire and to Whitby in the summer, he would often go out with my grandfather, running along him as he cycled off to do some local painting. And this one, as you see, that's one of my grandfather's. He's nothing without hard work.
Yeah.
And in Whitby, he did a lot of, well, all over the place, watercolours using this type of thing. There's a Somerset farm, lending. So we're getting towards the close. You can see that he painted almost every day except Sunday and holidays. He loved gardening. And he enjoyed golf and fishing later in life. And he played the violin and the clarinet, but mostly the violin. So he was quite an accomplished person. He was really did very nice still life of poppies and roses, but the poppies were one of his favourite things that he would draw. He was a member, as you know, of the 1904 arts group, and he took part and did, there's a picture, did the weekly paintings, and we have some pictures of the things, but this is one of the ones where the subject was nearing the end. You can see this is a whale that's turning over and about to die, and this is the fishermen or the whale hunters. So an odd, bit macabre idea, but obviously it had was recognised by those who were selecting what should go in the archives. He was president here, and in conclusion, this is one of his fishing pictures. My father said in his, when he wrote a little thing about my grandfather, the most equitable man I have ever come across, a fine artist, sportsman and musician. My father had all the good qualities of a Victorian, and to my knowledge, none of the bad. So that really is, I hope, filled you in a little bit on what my grandfather was and did, and we're all quite proud of him. Thank you. Yes. Do you have any questions? Yes.
How did he earn his money? How did he earn his money in order to be able to do the painting?
Yes, he did. He sold a lot of paintings. He exhibited here in Bristol, and also actually there is a list of all the places that we know that he exhibited, but I didn't bring it with me. So, but he did send his paintings up to London to be exhibited, and was fairly successful. And I mean, when he sold the paintings, I think he was asking a couple of £100, but of course, a couple of £100 then was quite a lot of money now. So, but he sold quite a lot. And if you Google Frederic Stuart Richardson, go to Google Images, Frederic Stuart Richardson, you can see all the paintings that have been sold or being moved around. Google Images. Yes?
Ladies first, sorry.
Sorry?
This young lady at the corner here, got her hand up at the same
Yeah.
time as me.
I was just wondering, because a lot of his scene painting has a slightly misty feel to it, and
Yeah.
I was just thinking,
Sorry?
shall I stand up and then
Yes,
just wanted
yes.
to ask, when he was in Paris,
Yes?
would that have been at the same time as the Impressionists?
Yes, it was, absolutely, yes. It was, I haven't got the note. Yeah. Yeah.
So that everybody can hear.
Might be a bit too late now. I was just thinking that a lot of his scenes had a slightly impressionist feel to them, and I was just asking if he'd been in Paris at the same time as the Impressionists were building their
Oh,
name,
yeah,
really.
yeah,
And if
absolutely.
he was influenced by them, and if you've got any
Yeah.
written
No, we don't have any written information from when he was in Paris. We know that he worked with Carolus Durand, but he met other Impressionists when he was there and shifted because Durand was more with portraiture. He shifted from doing that to doing landscapes and seascapes, and that's really what he was best at and focused on. Yes.
You mentioned early days painting en plein air in oil
Yes.
in the mountains.
Of North America.
No, it wasn't. It was in North America. All his paintings that he did there on that trip, because it's the one and only trip that he did, were all watercolor on sketch pad, which was about half the size of the red table scale.
Okay, that's a good size. And he, en plein air, painting landscapes, wild mountains and so on. At that time of life, or at that time, he would have no doubt come across the Canadian, not far away from North America, the group of seven.
I think no, they were later. I think so. Anybody remember when the group of seven was? But I think they were a bit later on. But as far as I know, he didn't. He was travelling with his cousin who was sightseeing, so he was painting, whilst they were going along. So he wasn't visiting other artists.
Then maybe the group of seven were influenced by him.
Could be. Probably not.
I have a microphone.
Thank you. That was most interesting. I mean, you said he was born near the Suspension Bridge.
Yes.
Do you have
Zion Hill.
on Zion Hill?
Yes,
Do you have
Zion
any
Hill.
idea what
The
number?
house is still there, I think.
Do you know what number Zion Hill?
I might have it in my. I've got a little bit of information with me.
Okay.
I might have it, yeah, but yes, that number is known.
Right.
Yes.
And then when he came back to Bristol, he was always in Long Ashton, was he?
No, when he came. Oh yes, he was
Yeah.
always in Long Ashton.
Right. Yes.
St Martin's is one of the house, and then yes, that's where he was.
Yeah.
He came back because he had a relative who ran a school there.
Yeah.
So he worked in it's called St Martin's in Long Ashton.
Yeah.
The house probably has the same name there.
Yeah.
And it's
Thank you.
a nice painting studio.
Anybody else?
Did he cycle everywhere? Because I get the impression.
Yes, he hated cars. Absolutely.
Because I get.
Yeah.
So he lived in Long Ashton and was
Yeah.
a member here.
Yeah.
So I wonder how he got here on a Wednesday night. Perhaps he.
Well, he definitely didn't go by car. So I don't know. That's a very good question, and I don't have an answer. My father would have known, but I don't. Yes.
Yeah, if you get the microphone.
You live in St Martin?
And I've done a lot of research into your grandfather and his family, and I've met your father a number of times. He was staying with his sister,
Yes.
Ellen North Richardson. Now, she was a very keen scientist, so I would suspect she might have been keen.
Who was that?
Nell.
Oh,
his
Nell.
sister. His
Yeah.
sister, Nell.
Yeah.
She was married to the headmaster.
Right, that's right.
And that was a connection.
Yeah.
And that's why I think, yeah, he was staying with us. She was one of his four siblings.
Yes. But I think she was from the second marriage.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's it. There's a lady over here, Mike. Mike?
Are there any other artists in the present family? Has the tradition continued?
Yes, my father was a country doctor and farmer, or at least my mother ran the farm. He was a country doctor, and he was an amateur artist, portrait artist. And then my sister Gay did art in Oxford and does professional art, paint watercolours mostly. And she lives in Portugal and does pictures of local scenes. And and then my other sister Diana started art when she retired, and she's not bad actually. She's in Cornwall. So I have no talent whatever. My father tried to get me, he bought me watercolours and oil colours and what have you. And after I produced a cross-eyed Norseman, certainly I really didn't have any talent, and I don't.
I too live in St Martin's, and I remember your father came and visited with his granddaughter, who I think must have been from Portugal.
Yeah,
and
that's right, that would have been nice.
And that was probably, I don't know, 1990 sometime.
Yeah.
But the thing I remember is in our living room, there's a big open fireplace.
Yeah.
And he said he could remember one of the kitchen maids getting a letter from indicating that her sweetheart had been killed on the Western Front.
Oh.
You know, it's just sort of really poignant, you know, that was one of his memories of his childhood, you know, he was probably under 10 at that time. It was lovely to meet him, and presumably your niece, I guess.
Yes, yeah, that's right. I visited after my grandfather died, my grandmother lived at Little Mount, which is up the street from there. But I did visit St Martin's a couple of occasions with my grandmother. Yeah.
One of the last paintings you showed was of a whaler, a beached whale.
Yes.
Where would that have been?
Oh, that was with the weekly topic. Remember where you have an hour and a half to produce a painting.
The whaler would have been.
And nearing the end was the title of the art your art group had to deal with on that evening. And my grandfather obviously got this idea of doing a whale picture, but it wasn't
from Canada, wasn't it? It wouldn't have been influenced. No, he was. It would have just been something that came into his mind that night, which was novel, I guess. Yes.
I live in Newlyn, and as I said to you, I live in Newlyn, right by the harbour, and my friends live in Thomas Scotch's house, which is called Will Betsy. It's a wonderful Edwardian house at the top of the hill, and I'm sure they've got your grandfather's paintings in there, and they've got a wonderful collection of art. And I just wondered how long you spent in Newlyn. Did you spend time in Newlyn?
Sorry?
Did your grandfather spend time in Newlyn?
Oh yes.
So
yes.
he would have known all the artists?
Yes, he would.
Well, there's a whole collection of about 5 wonderful Edwardian houses at the top of Tune Hill, right by the art school, which they built. They had specially built. And they've just got this big house. Well, Betsy, you can see it online. They've just got it listed there. But the woman who's got the house, Pam Hogg, they bought it and they've restored it as it would have been in Thomas Scotch's time. And they've got a huge, they run the archive, they've got a huge collection of, information about the artists. Yeah, so, but do you know how long you spent there?
No, I don't. No, I don't know. What?
They would know. I mean, when I go back...
He obviously was... it might be possible to find out, but
Well, Pam would know because she's written 2 volumes on when the artist came to Newlyn, you see.
Yeah.
So,
No, well, it was obviously my grandmother was married in 1912, right?
yeah.
So it would have been before sometime before 1912.
Well, Gosh was there then.
Yeah.
You know.
I don't know.
Because a lot of the artists went to Newlyn and they educated the fishermen in making copperware, which became very famous. So that when they weren't fishing, they could earn an income from the copper. And there's still the Newlyn Copper Works now, you can see all the work.
Interesting.
Thank you, that's a really, really interesting talk. I just wondered, you may have said, but are there any paintings of your grandfather in Bristol Art Gallery?
Yes, there are, I believe. But I don't know which ones. I don't think there are any of the ones that I showed, but
So we can go look.
There certainly are in the art gallery.
The Art UK website will tell you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Can you tell us, or can one of our more long-standing artists tell us how long your grandfather was a member of this tribe?
Let me think. He would tell you what, it was likely from 1912 when his father died, and he moved to Bristol, so it would have probably been from 1912. In 1932 he was the president.
I think he became a member in 1920, and I think he was an artist for something like 23 years or something. It was something I remember like 23 years.
Good answer, thank you. It's in the book, isn't it?
Yeah, it's in our spirit.
Yeah. In fact,
yes, you just presented me with a copy.
It's in the book.
Those who.
It's in the book, David. Yeah.
so you can.
Yeah.
It's at the back.
The back, yeah.
By the way, if you're looking at Frederic Stuart Richardson, you frequently find a K on it. He was actually without a K. He was named after Frederica, which was one of his relatives. But most of the time people put a K on it. It doesn't matter when you Google it.
Right. He died in 1934, still a member, and he became a member in 1920. Okay, so.
Yeah. So.
No more questions. Thank you. Sorry to thank you ever so much for that talk. It was fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And thank you for coming all the way from Canada.
Especially.
But it was such an interesting talk. I'm currently an artist here, and I am constantly amazed by the wealth we have in this club of all this art. And I often say we stand on the shoulders of giants.
Adrian, could you move back a little bit?
What an amazing life artists had there. It speaks of an era, doesn't it? 'Cause it's almost like a same pattern for the Scottish colourists, for all those kind of artist groups, the Chelsea group, the New London group. They all have this fantastic life of going over to Paris, spending a bit of time there as a young man, which, strangely enough, often isn't documented, because I think Paris was quite a place there, wasn't it? And a place to be studying with an eminent artist and then coming back and finding their own language in art. And your grandfather certainly found his own language in art. Very, very distinctive, isn't it?
Yeah.
And those smoky little fires, aren't they fantastic?
Yeah.
Lovely colour, kind of blue colour.
Yeah.
It's a real smoky colour. And yeah, it's just great. And that was so interesting hearing about his techniques as well, because you often don't hear that about artists, but you've got it straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak.
Well, this is from my father.
Yes, yeah, who obviously saw him out.
Oh, yeah.
And I think a lot of artists now, they do it the other way around. They still do watercolours or sketches and then go into oils. But that's really interesting, using oils outside and then doing a watercolour afterwards. So thank you ever so much. That was absolutely interesting. Very, very interesting indeed.
Thank you. That's in your pocket as well, it's pretty good. Yeah. And I better take the remote control as well, I guess.
We'll do the, yeah, and we'll swap the
The reason I was asking about where he was born,
Yeah.
is I